Did America really almost lose the Revolutionary War? The answer teeters on the edge of what-ifs, where a single storm, a betrayed plan, or a desperate winter could have sealed the fate of a fledgling nation. Stick around as we unravel the razor-thin margins that turned rebellion into revolution. The story begins in the sweltering heat of colonial unrest. By 1775, tensions between Britain and its American colonies had boiled over into open conflict. The British Empire, the mightiest power on earth, commanded vast armies, a formidable navy, and endless resources. Against them stood a ragtag group of farmers, merchants, and idealists led by George Washington, a man with more resolve than experience. The first shots at Lexington and Concord echoed like a dare, but the real test came soon after. In the Battle of Bunker Hill, American forces held their ground against wave after wave of redcoats, inflicting heavy casualties before retreating. Yet this victory masked a dire truth. The colonists were outgunned, outtrained, and running low on everything from gunpowder to morale. Whispers spread through the ranks. Could they really stand against the King's legions? As the war dragged into 1776, the British struck back with overwhelming force. General William Howe landed 32,000 troops on Staten Island, the largest expeditionary force Britain had ever assembled. New York City fell like a house of cards. Washington's army, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, fled across the East River under cover of fog, a miraculous escape that saved the revolution from ending right there. But the retreats continued. Fort Washington surrendered, thousands of Americans captured. By December, Washington's forces dwindled to a shadow, crossing the icy Delaware River in a desperate bid for survival. The Hessian garrison at Trenton never saw it coming. On Christmas night, amid howling winds and sleet, Washington's men rode through the storm, their boats cracking against the ice. They surprised the enemy at dawn, capturing nearly 1,000 prisoners with barely a shot fired in return. It was a spark of hope, but the war's darkest hours loomed ahead. Enter the brutal winter of 1777 at Valley Forge. Snow blanketed the Pennsylvania hills as Washington's army huddled in log huts, their feet wrapped in rags, stomachs empty from supply shortages. Smallpox ravaged the camp, men deserted by the hundreds. British forces lounged comfortably in Philadelphia, just miles away, feasting while the Continentals starved. Baron von Steuben arrived like a lifeline, drilling the troops into a disciplined force, but the question hung heavy. Would spring bring renewal or collapse? Meanwhile, up north, the British hatched a plan to split the colonies in two. General John Burgoyne marched south from Canada with 8,000 men, expecting easy conquest. The wilderness fought back. Dense forests, swollen rivers, and American guerrillas whittled his army down. At Saratoga, the turning point unfolded in chaos. Horatio Gates's forces encircled Burgoyne, cannons roaring through the autumn leaves. After two fierce battles, Burgoyne surrendered his entire army on October 17, 1777. This stunning upset convinced France to join the fray, tipping the scales with ships, soldiers, and gold. Yet even with allies, defeat lurked around every corner. The war shifted south in 1778, where British strategy aimed to exploit Loyalist strongholds. Charleston fell in 1780, the worst American defeat of the conflict, over 5,000 troops captured, including the entire Southern Army. General Nathaniel Greene took command, waging a war of attrition through the Carolinas. At Cowpens, Daniel Morgan's riflemen lured British forces into a deadly trap, shattering Banastre Tarleton's cavalry in a whirlwind of musket fire and bayonets. But the British pressed on, bleeding the Americans dry. Cornwallis marched into Virginia, seeking a decisive blow, only to find himself cornered at Yorktown. French Admiral de Grasse's fleet sealed the Chesapeake Bay, cutting off escape by sea. Washington raced south, his army bolstered by French troops under Rochambeau. For weeks, siege lines inched closer, artillery pounding the British redoubts. Suspense built as supplies dwindled inside the town. Cornwallis's men ate rats, buried their dead under fire. On October 19, 1781, the Redcoats marched out, drums beating the mournful, the world turned upside down. Surrender at Yorktown broke Britain's will, but the war lingered for 2 more years, with skirmishes and negotiations dragging on. Looking back, the Revolution's survival hinged on fragile threads. A different wind at the Delaware might have doomed Washington's crossing. Without Saratoga, France stays neutral and the colonies fracture. Valley Forge's endurance forged an army from despair, while Yorktown's allyship crushed the final hope of British reconquest. America didn't just win, it clawed victory from the jaws of oblivion, proving that determination could defy empires. What lessons does this hold for today? Hit that like button if these close calls gripped you, subscribe to History in America for more tales from our past, and drop a comment. Which moment do you think was the closest call? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next chapter of history.